This episode of the Better 2 podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and DM Needham, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. Today's guest is Audra Bryant. She's got a podcast called I've Got Scars, Baby. And we delve into that. And we also delve into how, when she was 18 months old, her curiosity got the best of her, and she ended up having something happen that would present with her having 6 surgeries and scar her for the rest of her life. But it's not a bad story. It's a story about learning about loving yourself. And I think anybody can benefit from hearing it. Hi, Audra. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So when we first talked, when you first reached out, you said you wanted to be a guest on the podcast, and you have your own podcast.
Yes.
I've Got Scars, Baby. And,
yes.
A lot of people have metaphorical scars, but you actually had an experience when you were a little baby that caused you some painful scars. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I was burned at 18 months old. And basically my story in a nutshell, I was burned at 18 months. I had 6 surgeries between 2 and 16. And I didn't look at myself in the mirror until I was 25 because I didn't want to see my scars. So that's been my experience. And, you can, for anyone that may be viewing, you can kind of see these scars, and also have one on my shoulders, so my chest, my shoulder, and my neck. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you don't really know what happened, but what do you know of what happened to you? I mean, I'm sure it was an accident.
Yeah. So I was under my father's care at the time, and he was also with his godmother, and so they were just having coffee at the table, that kind of thing. And, coffee was on the side of the table, and here I come as a curious toddler, and I pulled a cup of coffee onto myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's one of those situations where you think about accidents of any sort. It could have been some cold water in there. Mm-hmm. It could have been anything. It just happened to have been hot coffee.
Yeah. I mean, and I know from my own personal experience as a step parent, the girls had come over to live with us they came over for like the second weekend. And, I thought I took care and kid-proof the house enough. I don't have experience. They're 4 and 6, and they're in the bathtub and they're playing, the phone rings, and I go out to answer the phone, and then I hear somebody scream. Well, somebody decided to kiss my razor. Yeah, that's a really bloody bleed. But I was panicked because their mom and dad didn't care. Me, I'm like mortified. But it's one of those things where you try your best as a parent, and sometimes you don't always realize.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Growing up, I never blamed my dad or anything like that. It's just, kids are curious. They're going to move around. Sometimes they get from your sight for just a second, anything can happen, So it's not anything I blame my father about. It was just one of those things where I just kind of said it was just a why me? Like, why did this have to happen to me type of situation? And so that's pretty much what I was dealing with, was the why did this have to happen to me? Because I was the only one that I knew that was a burn survivor. I was the only one. I wasn't a part of the community. So,
and it's got to be hard. I mean, being a kid, period, is hard, but being a kid with a scar doesn't necessarily always fit in. I remember my sister-in-law had adopted 2 children from China, and one of them had a cleft palate, and they had all the surgeries and everything. And so they came to see my husband at the hospital, and we're sitting there, and there's an ad for cleft palate babies. And no one had ever talked to her about this. And she, I think, was 6 or 7, and she's flipping through the magazine with me, and she runs across this, and she goes, "That's a weird looking baby. What's wrong with it?" And I just looked at her mom, and I'm like, this is something for you to talk to her about. because it wasn't my space to do it, but it's something that when we are so, dare I say, it's gotten better, but we have had so many images throughout time of perfect people, that
Yeah.
people that had a scar or something, that's just not right.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's kind of the purpose of I've Got Scars, Baby. And all of that is to kind of dispel this myth that of what normal, what perfect, if perfect even exists, quote unquote, and how much we're so fixated on that, on I have a scar, I look different, so therefore I'm wrong and everybody else is right. And so, and that's what I really dealt with, is feeling different, feeling like I'm out of place, feeling like I'm less than attractive, like not feeling feminine, and hiding. And that's just what I did, is I would hide. So
what finally made you decide, okay, I'm 25 years old, I need to face this?
So that was interesting. So, I started writing songs when I was 8 years old. And and I always felt like I was always the person that people would come to and ask advice and all that kind of thing. And so I love to encourage people and all of that. And so I remember in my room one day, um, I was, I think I might have been writing something, and I was just like imagining myself like encouraging people. And I felt like it's just something that's like in your spirit. I'm like, it's almost like I was like, like God was like, I was like, yeah, I'm so excited about encouraging people. This is going to be great. I'm just in that little space. And I just felt in my spirit, like, how are you going to encourage people if you won't even look at yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. And then it's like in the next moment, it was like, Audra, everybody has scars. Some on the outside, some on the inside. That moment, that little phrase right there was the thing that got me to look in the mirror for the first time and to do the work. And
Wow.
it was just about a 6-month process to actually, I had to actually stop doing the things that I did. I had practiced for so long getting in the shower, getting out of the shower, bypassing the mirror completely, putting on my clothes, and then going and doing anything in the mirror as long as I could put something on that covered me up. And that's what I had practiced doing. So I had to practice getting out of the shower, wrapping my towel around myself, but looking at myself in the mirror at my scar. I had to practice that.
Being honest with yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would have to, I mean, you can answer or you don't have to answer, but the one thing, how did this affect you in a relationship situation? Because so much, I mean, even now, it's like, how do you, dare I say, bare your soul, get naked with someone if you're not comfortable with yourself?
Oh, you are asking good questions on today.
Sorry.
If
it's too personal, you don't have to.
Oh, it's not. It's not. I actually share it in my book. Okay. So there's a passage in there, and I remember distinctly one year, just let me kind of preface it by saying this. Others, like anybody I dated, any guy that I dated, he was way more okay with my scar than I was. Okay. So let me just kind of say that. So I remember specifically my boyfriend at the time, it was his birthday, and I bought him a gift that he really, really, really liked. And to thank me, he kissed the tip of my scar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you say "aw," and
but I know it sounds sweet, but you're mortified.
But for me,
yeah,
it was the most uncomfortable feeling I'd ever felt in the world. It felt like it felt like akin to like molestation. Like that's the only thing I could think of, because in my head, I disappeared. That's how disconnected I was from my body. I disappeared and I like froze. I was frozen. It was uncomfortable. What was probably like 2 seconds felt like 10 minutes. It was awful, honestly.
Yeah.
It was awful. But I consciously knew that he wasn't trying to harm me. He was just trying to express affection. But it was the most uncomfortable experience. So that's how things were. I mean, let alone, one of the things I always said, I said, making out with me was like playing a game of Twister. Like, you can kiss here, but not here. You can kiss here, but not here. Is that kind of a thing. And so that's what intimacy was like for me. It was terrifying.
I can imagine. And,
Yeah.
The thing is, even if you're a healthy person, and I'm not discrediting you, even if you're a healthy person, there's still so many stigmas and phobias that I don't have a perfect body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's unnerving. I remember, and this is way TMI, I know, but I've talked about it before on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my ex-husband one day telling me I didn't have a Playboy kitty. And I just, that stuck with me. It's like, and the more I thought about it, it's like, how does one have one of those?
Yeah.
I mean, it's airbrushed. It's not real.
Yeah. And I heard people get surgeries and things, all types of stuff.
Why do we have to conform so much to be this Barbie doll cookie cutter?
And I think we don't. I think it's just that one of the things I learned in this whole process was the importance of vulnerability and integrity, having integrity with yourself. And just learning like this idea of self-acceptance on a very like powerful level. And it's like, the interesting part is, I think we want to be accepted by everybody else, but we don't understand that self-acceptance is the very key. If we're talking about from a spiritual perspective, self-acceptance is the thing that essentially attracts other people to accept you. Mm-hmm. That's what it does. Because if you're just over there like, hey, this is what it is, I got burned, I got scars, baby. That's why I named it I Got Scars, Baby. It comes from a lyric in my song, Scars. But the idea is, I got scars, baby. What's up? Yeah. What else? You know what I'm saying? Like, what else are we going to talk about? Because this is not the focal point anymore. And I think that's it. It's just that we make so many things way bigger than they are. When people, the bravest thing you can do is allow somebody to love you for who you really are.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I mentioned a while ago, I'm a writer, and you've done some writing yourself. And it's like,
yes,
when I look at this, we look at book covers and we always judge the book cover. And then we look at the blurb. And really, that's our whole philosophy, even when it comes to people. We look at the book cover, we look at what you look like, and, oh, okay, or, oh, no. But you don't really know what's going on with that person to make them who they were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And dare I say, now we have social media that is a bizarre thing, as we all know. But I mean, the weirdest thing is like, oh, so I'm going to tell you that this mascara is the best thing in the world. So now everybody's going to go get it. But it's not going to make you necessarily look like this other person.
No. Media in general, I always kind of look at it like this. Media is doing the job that it's supposed to do. And the job at the end of the day is like, look, if people as a whole felt really good about themselves, that would affect the economy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's like, Well, are you going to go and buy this product or buy this car if it doesn't make you feel better about yourself? If you were just over here all confident and happy and everything is fine, you're less likely to need a lot of things from the outside to make you feel good. And so I think, though, that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the car,
No.
enjoy the nice house, the nice clothes, the makeup. But if you're enjoying it in a way where you understand, you're very clear that this does not make you anything more or less. It just is something that you might choose to have. And so, but I think you probably are going to get a lot more customers if it's like, oh, you need this.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you look at it, something you said is very true here, because we are all taught from a very young age that outside stimulation or outside factors will make us better. Whether it's our parents' love, whether it's our teachers' praise, we're taught consistently that the outside matters.
Yeah.
And there's no time to really sit there and go, okay, you need to look on the inside for you. Yeah. You need to confront what's going on with you. If something's bothering you, you need to take a look at it. We don't teach self-care in school. We don't teach journaling. We don't teach mental health. And then we wonder why we have so many people that are messed up. Well, if everybody's trying to look like and keep up with the Joneses or the Smiths or whoever, how are we ever going to actually look and connect with people?
And you're absolutely right about that. That is what we have to shift. It's critically important. And that is really like the focus that I'm looking to have. And that's the lesson I had to really learn. And I feel like I'm still learning in many ways, is that, okay, really how I change whatever's going on out here is in here. Mm-hmm. That's how I shifted. And it's like, as soon as I shifted my perspective about my scar, the less I feel like I see eyes looking at my scar. That's very interesting, right? The scar is not gone away, it's the same. But when I started to accept it, it's like, I don't see the eyes. I don't see the stares. I don't see what happens. Sometimes I do with kids, especially I will. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's just like when you explain to a child what happened and what's going on, what I noticed is that they're just like, I just don't want you to be hurt.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's coming from a place of love, when at one point in time, especially in my experience, because I had an experience at 3 years old in a ballet class that was just like, so when it's coming from a place of love, then it's just like, oh, well, it's not bad. This person cares about me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've had some things during my lifetime. I've had some experiences where I've been judged and been mortified by being judged. I remember as an adult, now this goes back to vanity, and vanity is kind of along the lines of what we're talking about. And I remember I had a ganglion cyst in my hand, and I'm like, well, I should get that taken care of. And so they tried to break it and everything. It didn't. We're going to have to do surgery. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. So I'm so worried about somebody holding my hand and feeling this lump that it's going to be a problem. So I'm like, well, let's have surgery. So they go in, they cut it. I screwed up my hand because I woke up and stretched it. And so I had this nice scar that was about this long. Mm. And guess what? I still have a bone spur. So I still have the lump in my hand, and I had a scar. I ended up having to do 2 surgeries, and the scar is better, but I mean, you can't even see it now. But at one point it was really a bad keloid scar. And I remember my oldest stepdaughter, because I hadn't seen her for a while and I had gone to visit, and she looked at me and I got so tired of asking how I had gotten the scar. I mean, that was like it was the conversation piece. How'd you get that? I finally got to the point where I was just joking around. I was like, I got into a knife fight. That's exactly what happened. I got into a knife fight. Because it's like you get so tired of trying to explain
the story. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it, like, even when you get to the point of self-acceptance, it is like, because of what I noticed after I looked in the mirror at myself and I was like, okay, I can look at it. I can touch it. I'm okay. I realized, oh, that's not it. That was just the first step. Then I had to go and show it to the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I had a whole kind of a reveal for myself. Like, I wore a swimsuit for the first time without a t-shirt at a pool party. And that was my first time revealing myself. But the funny part is that I thought I was actually going to get a million questions. At that pool party, I didn't get a million questions. The only reason I think I didn't get a million questions at the pool party is because, from what they said, and they didn't even know that I had any issues with my scar at all, is because I didn't seem like I had issues with my scar.
Okay.
And so people, I think, sometimes people are scared to ask, but it is a lot of times the question, like, what happened? Or you do see somebody staring a little bit and then you just want to answer it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got burned when I was a baby. What else we gonna talk about? You know what I'm saying? And so that can trigger someone. So I don't want to make light of that. Because but what I started to do is I took it differently. I received it differently. I didn't feel like I'm a weirdo.
Right.
And that's why you're asking me these questions. It was just like, oh, you're curious. Let me fill you in. Like, you're curious because you care and you're like, hey, what, everything cool? Like, what happened? Oh my gosh. Or you're like, wow, it's beautiful. Or you're like, oh wow, you're so strong. You got a knife fight and you're just sitting over here chilling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think people are really fascinated sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, and that's why sometimes, like I said, I just got to the point where it was like, let me elaborate. It's a big fallacy, but it sounds better than, vanity. It's funny because it's a valuable lesson, because here I was being vain, and it's like, you still ended up with a lump in your hand. You're still back to where you started. And that's the thing I don't think many people realize, especially with the aging process. Well, I better go get this done, this done, this done.
Yeah.
But it's your body. Your beauty has changed. You're not the same person you were in your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole thing right there. I think that, can be alarming. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of like, well, what are your options?
Well, their options are, you can fill yourself with silicone and Botox. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do that, because but there are some people that just don't want to age. And it's like,
and I get that.
I get it. But at a certain point, what are you doing to your face? What are you doing to your body? I mean, singer Kenny Rogers does not even look like himself, or didn't look like himself before he's looking feminine. It's like, why do you want to do that? Bruce Jenner, granted, before his surgery, when he was Bruce, why do you want to do that?
You know what I would like to see? I'll say this. I would like for us as people, as human beings, to get to a point where we love ourselves so completely and so thoroughly that it's like, literally, like, if you don't love me the way I am, all right, you don't get all this goodness then. Like, you're not going to experience the goodness that is me. And that's really sad. Mm-hmm. That you're going to let a very, very small natural thing deter you from liking me or drawing to me or feeling connected to me. And I think, though, what I will say is that I started looking at, comments. I watch comments and stuff when they look at people and certain celebrities and everything. And especially when certain celebrities may have had some work done or things like that, people do actually say, like, why did you do that? You were so beautiful, or you're so attractive, or you look great before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes, and it makes me wonder if sometimes um, it's because we feel like we have to look a certain way in order to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
But because I even, I've heard people say, man, like the women in the 90s were beautiful because their makeup was so natural looking and they just, they were healthy looking and just vibrant and they just threw a little something on and they were fine. And I think that might be the situation. And we may not always know that people are just like, yeah, I would like for you to just look like that.
Well, I mean, honestly, before I started doing the podcast, I rarely wore makeup. And when I'm not doing the
Mm,
podcast, I don't wear it. And my husband never cared.
yeah.
He liked me for me. And, going back to celebrity culture for a second, there's Paulina Porskova. And I'm sure and she's out there being herself. And she's got people that are hating on her saying, well, you're being narcissistic. Why is she being narcissistic when she's trying to champion that I'm old and I'm willing to be natural. I'm willing to be me. I'm willing to bare my soul and be me. Granted, she looks great and not all of us have that luxury, but why are we attacking somebody because they're willing to be who they were or who they are?
I think it's probably because maybe those people who don't agree with it, maybe they're in a space within themselves where they're
Hello?
just like, I'm comfortable with myself. So why should you feel comfortable being yourself? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but I typically find that when you're a happy like person and you like who you are, you tend to like other people too.
Yeah.
You tend to just let people do what they do and be who they are, and you're okay with it. And I think that that's really beautiful. And
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting because,
Yeah.
when people gain weight,
Yeah.
we'll go back to this because it's just easier to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about a guy gaining weight, a celebrity gaining weight. And it's like, oh, he's got a
Mm-hmm.
dad bod, or a woman gaining weight. Oh, she's gained. Okay, but here's the truth of the matter. Very rarely, when you hit your 40s and 50s, are you not going to gain a middle age spread? Very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't accept that. We do the whole diet culture. We do the whole exercise culture that I'm going to go to the gym starting the beginning of the year. What about health issues that actually cause you not to be able to lose that weight, or to gain it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a believer in taking care of your vessel the best way that you can. Like, um, I believe in being healthy in general.
Mm-hmm.
And, so if we think about eating in a way that is healthiest for you, exercising so that you are healthy and not doing things that could be harmful toward you. Because sometimes if you do a certain diet thing,
Mm-hmm.
it may not really be healthy for you. It could be harmful. So, but I think if you are unhappy with what you're seeing showing up on your body, if you're unhappy with your weight and things of that sort, if you can fix it with like diet and exercise, like maybe that, what, I just love to eat fried chicken and mac and cheese all the time. Like if that's your thing and that that's negatively impacting your health, then that's a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you need to go like, I need to fix this. But if you gain some weight naturally because, you're middle age, you still work out, you still, are eating healthy, and that's just your natural weight, then
Mm-hmm.
just be okay with it.
Well,
Be like, okay, you got some curves. All right, you got some grown woman curves.
That's the thing. It's like people will think, oh, well, there was a woman that I know who was proud of herself because she could still fit into like teenage size clothes and she was in her 50s. And I'm like, okay, that's good. That's good. But I'm like, and then she'd be like, I'm just so fat. And I'm thinking to myself, honey, you can still fit in teenage clothes. Why are you saying this?
Well, I think that's probably also a situation where people are like,
I need a little ego stroke.
yeah, it probably feels good. It's kind of like that. Oh, I still like I'm smaller than I was in high school, and you're like 35 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think too that it's important also to look at um what culture is saying is normal. I think it would be good to look at what culture is saying is normal. If culture is saying that having at least 3 ailments by the time you're 50 is normal, you can follow culture and
Mm-hmm.
be normal, or you can do something, you can be counterculture, so to speak, and not have any ailments or have 6 ailments, twice the amount of ailments. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like pick whatever you want to do, pick it and go with it. And maybe her thing was just like, look, I'm just excited that I'm tiny. And that's
Yeah.
how she, as long as she's not over here eating a cracker a day, then she should be.
Well, she wasn't actually eating a lot. So that's why I was just kind of like, you need to make sure you're eating. But,
Yeah.
the fact is, it goes down to, and I've talked about this before on the show many a times, about labels. We label everything and everyone. And if you don't fit into a little box, then, well, we don't know what to do with you. And that goes back to if we taught school, granted, I know we need a well-rounded education. That's what really is funny when you think about college. We say we're going to give you a well-rounded education. Shouldn't that well-rounded education start in grammar school, where you know how to relate to people and talk to people and, handle stress?
Yeah, you would think that they would teach the fundamentals would be about, financial building wealth and things like that, and being financially conscious, so to speak, and how to
Cooking.
I know, but that's so funny. They used to have home ec, and then it was just like goodbye, and so now you have people
Well, I
like,
mean,
how do I boil water? What is this?
when I was,
You know?
I'm a kid of I was in high school in the 80s, and we still had home ec, we still had shop
Wow.
class, they still had all of those things. And it's like, you did a disservice by taking those out, because what do kids do now? I remember, my stepfather said, if you're going to learn to drive, you're going to learn how to work on a car. And granted, I grew up in a garage because my dad drove, or my dad worked on cars. So it wasn't scary for me to say, okay, I'll do this. I just did it. And I remember getting a flat, and it had been snowing, and my friend's car got a flat. And she's like, well, let's call road service. And I'm like, why? She goes, because I don't know how to change a tire. I'm like, I'm in heels in the snow doing the tire. This guy comes out in a suit, and he's like, oh, you got me blocked in. Well, I'll come back out. Didn't offer to help. I changed the tire and I was fine with it. It's just like, now and this is outside Chicago. When I lived in a small town in Indiana, even here in a small town, if I go to check my tire pressure, oh, no, let me get that for you, ma'am.
Yep.
It's like,
yep.
What?
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
My whole point is, if you teach kids fundamentals, even growing vegetables, you're giving them something that, I'm not saying that what they learn is wrong. It's not. But you're giving them some fundamental education on how they can take care of themselves.
I hear you, and that sounds so much like right. Yeah, I mean, it just honestly, it makes sense, and because I didn't grow up and I wasn't at home ec or anything like that, and it's just like, and it shows. Like it shows. And it's one of those situations where unfortunately you're not going to get that education because when you become an adult, if you don't learn it as a child, then you have to go and pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just what it is. And so I think that even, as an adult, we have to kind of look at maybe the things that we did not learn. And then we have to say, okay, I need to educate myself in these areas. That's just what it boils down to. Because it's not going to just be given,
No.
unfortunately. And so, yeah, you just got to have to do what you have to do to actually learn those things so that you can have a life that you feel empowered by. You have knowledge that you can, that's very practical.
Well, the internet's a great tool for that. And I'm going to say this. I didn't go to home ec. I did not go to home ec. But
Okay.
I had a grandmother who knew how to cook. And I was just having this conversation earlier today. And I'm like, yeah, I got a ham. So now I can make split pea soup, red beans, black bean soup. And my friend's like, you're actually cooking this? She's like, are you using canned? I'm like, no, I'm using dried beans. Because that's all, making it from scratch. But because I had a grandma, however, when it comes to making roux, I'm from New Orleans. When it comes to making roux, I can't stand making roux. I don't have the patience to make roux. I have an uncle that when he gets stressed, that is his zen time, sitting there making a roux. I'm like, no.
First of all, you just said it. You from New Orleans? Because I went to school in New Orleans. I went to Xavier, and I was just like, what in the world is this deliciousness that is down here in this city? Okay. Yeah. So that means you know what you're doing, girl. Okay. You know what you're doing, child. Lord.
Well, here, since you've been down there, you'll have a good laugh. When my husband and I first started dating, he's like, I want to cook you dinner. I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, I'll make steak and this, and I'll make some red beans and rice. And I looked over at him and I'm thinking to myself, boy, you have lived in Chicago all your life. What are you talking about?
Red beans and rice.
I said, are you going to use Zatarans? He's like, yeah, the Zatarans in the box. I said, honey, that's not red beans and rice.
He just offended you, okay?
I just looked over and he's like, yeah, when I made them for him, he's like, these are nice and creamy. But yeah, that's not like Zatarans. I'm like, no.
See, I ain't nothing for me to talk about anymore. You talking about New Orleans and all of the goodness? Like, you might as well just end the cooking conversation at that point, okay? I give credit where credit is due. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's really what it boils down to, is that's when you got Zatarans. Hey, because that was the first thing I thought about. I was like, oh, he done got some Zatarans.
Well, that's the thing. That's the perception. And here's it goes back to, over time, things have changed. So Zatarans has become perfectly acceptable. Yes. But I know I know from my grandmother how to make this. So therefore, ergo, but that doesn't always work out, because people that have never had true red beans and rice are like, well, this isn't right. And I'm going to be really gross right now. My dad taught me to put in red beans and rice, you put a little mayo in there to give it a little zing.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. See, I did not know about that. See, you see what I'm saying? All the information that I did not know anything about. Look at you.
Yeah, well.
Schooling me.
Let's get back to the topic at hand.
Yes.
So one thing when you were talking about writing music that kind of stuck out to me is the song Christina Aguilera wrote called Beautiful.
Yes.
And I remember listening to that first time because, I mean, I've had my own issues with the way I look. I think we all have. And I remember crying listening to that song.
Yeah. So
did that song have any meaning for you when you heard it?
When it first came out, I definitely, I'm going to be honest. When it first came out, I wasn't necessarily in a place where I'd explored myself and how I connected to myself and related to beauty as it pertained to me. Because if I think about it, that was quite some time ago that came out, a little while ago. And so not until, and I'll talk about, but I will talk about my song Scars.
Please do.
That was actually the opening of this whole kind of can of worms for me, so to speak. I'd had the revelation of looking at myself in the mirror when I was 25. But it took me at least about 10 years or so to write the song. And I asked myself, well, why did it take me so long to write the song? Because I thought that I had gotten to a space within myself where I felt confident, I felt good, and I was, letting people see my scars and all of that. And I tried to write a song every now and then over those 10 years, and it never came out right. And when I say right, it never came out, it didn't feel right. It came out, it was a sad song, like, oh, these scars, I'm so sad, like all of that. It was just sad.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, this doesn't feel right. And what I didn't realize, because I tend, like, as an artist, as a creator, that's where I'm honest. When you're writing out, so when you're creative, it's just the honesty just kind of comes out.
Right.
And it's like, that's just what it is. And so I then started to realize, oh, the reason why I didn't feel right is because I hadn't fully healed. I hadn't fully accepted my scars for real. I didn't want to talk about them. I finally got to a point where I felt more of like a functional person, where I'm not wearing turtlenecks and t-shirts that come up to here all the time. Like, I'm finally able to let wear a swimsuit without a t-shirt. That's great progress. But fully reconciling within my mind that I'm okay with this. I'm still beautiful. I am everything. Like, life would not have been better had I not had this scar. And so that when I think about music, that was kind of, and that was not until I released that in 2018. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. And I did a music video for it. And that was really me showing the world, like officially showing the world, okay, I think I'm good,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, besides the physicalness, you have all this emotional baggage, I guess, that you hadn't dealt with. I mean, because I'm sure throughout the years, kids weren't always nice. And, you were saying about the ballet class, it's like those things, whether we admit it or not, they ingrain on us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's like some days something that somebody said can still come back at you.
For sure. And that's really what it was, is that it was a situation where, yeah, you have to process the emotions behind the thing. And I think and I say we, because I just imagine that other people may experience that as well, is that you might get to the functional part. Okay, I still have to go to work. I still have to do this, right? You may get to the functional part, but how you really feel on the inside, you may suppress that. Mm-hmm. And so whoever's listening, it's like, okay, yeah. It's like I guess the idea, almost like the concept of a functioning alcoholic, so to speak. It's like, yeah, you may be able to get all the things done. You may be able to do well at work and take care of the kids and take care of your spouse and whatever. But how are you feeling, though, for real?
Well, and that goes back to people like Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, who the world thought they had their stuff together.
Yeah. 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 And that's it. That's why you can never, that's why when I think about the revelation of everybody has scars, some of the outside, some of the inside, it made me feel like I wasn't alone. And that's what I needed to feel in order to heal. So whoever's listening, you're not alone. Mm. Everybody has scars. And even if they are high functioning, they could be on a red carpet looking fabulous. You have no idea what they go home with.
No.
Every night. You have no idea how they see themselves, or something they may not be able to forgive themselves for, or whatever. You have no idea.
No.
That's why you can't envy, like envying someone or feeling like someone has a better life because maybe they have more money or they have children or they have a husband or a wife or this or that. No, because you just never know
No.
what the circumstances are behind all the things. And that doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily, because they can literally have a great family or whatever, but they could still have an insecurity
Well,
or several.
I mean, look at the whole Jason Momoa, Lisa Bonet thing. Everybody saw them as this perfect little couple. But now it's like you have so many people speculating, even though they've said, please do not. People are just speculating left and right about what happened. Well, nobody was in their bedroom. Nobody was in there. Nobody was listening to them daily. Just like, I'm a kid from divorce. I've gone through a divorce. You don't know what was going on between them.
Mm-mm.
And that's the one thing everybody's like, oh, well, if I had $1 million, life would be perfect. Would it? Because it's like and I know this for a fact. I remember being 21 and I'm like, okay, I'm moving to Dallas, I'm going to start a band, everything's going to be good. No, because here's the thing, until you actually deal with your own personal stuff, it doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter the partner you have, you're still taking you with you.
Yes.
And so many people don't realize that.
And I think honestly, probably the hardest thing and the thing that would really, really help if you're really disciplined in the area is the whole idea of like watering your own grass.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of thinking the grass is greener, just really water your grass and take really good care of it and nurture it. Because it takes so much more energy. It takes so much more maturity to take care of what you have before you. So whether that's your own family, whatever that looks like, whether it's your own personal health, whatever that looks like, whether it's like maybe it's you and your pet, and you take good care of what you have before you. And that doesn't mean you can't have other things. You can ask for the other things. But the way you treat what you have, it matters. Because if you treat whatever you have really well, then it can flourish. And so you focus on you and your stuff and whatever is in your realm right now. And then you can, okay, it would be nice to be married. That would be so fantastic. But if you're neglecting your own health, if you're neglecting your space, whatever that is, then even if you attract that other person into your life, are you going to have the energy to go out and do whatever with them? Are you going to do you want to invite them over to your space? Because if your space look like a hurricane and come in there because you so focused on everybody else being married and all of that, you see what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying.
So I'm like, take care of what you got going on, because then when you get that person in your life, right? Oh, if you're used to taking care of and watering your own grass, you done watered this relationship. Now the relationship is strong and beautiful. And now the thing that you were looking at other people and saying, oh my God, they're amazing, you have.
Mm-hmm.
Now you really, and you know that it's authentic. That's the thing. You know, because you are experiencing, you're living it, that is real.
And that's the thing. So many people don't know what's real.
Yes. That's why mind your beeswax.
I do have to laugh because somebody on TikTok, they friended me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, I could actually look it up I will look it up because it's just too ridiculous. And there's no other picture, nothing else. They just make this comment to me. And I'm just sitting there going, are you kidding me? And I actually wrote back, does this actually work? Because I had never heard something so ludicrous as this. Hello, beautiful. How are you doing today? I want you to be my sugar baby. I will pay you weekly. I'm like, does this actually work? And then I blocked him because I'm like, I'm not partaking of this at all. There's no real name. There's just some, they created some fake profile. And I'm just like, does somebody actually fall for this?
I have no idea, but I imagine somebody might say, you know what, let me give it a shot. You never know. I don't know. Oh,
go ahead.
Okay, no, wait, I have a question really quick.
Okay.
Are you, I do want to ask, and because if this is just going to be completely live, that's fine. But I did something I shouldn't have done. I forgot to plug in my computer. And so I wanted to grab my plug or my cord so I can plug it in so it doesn't die.
No, we can cut it. We can edit. Go ahead.
Okay, we can. Okay.
Yeah. It's not completely live.
Okay. Oh man, I was like, no, I forgot. Okay.
No, in fact, I have a sound guy who will go through and edit out everything for me. Thank goodness.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I felt so bad. I was like, oh no, I thought I had plugged it in.
No,
that's good.
I'm
good.
It's completely fine. And I mean, it's ridiculous about the TikTok thing. It's just one of those things where it's like, as a woman, you get that a lot. It's like, hi, beautiful. It's like, really? You don't even know me. And you're just.
Well, it's social media, and I think people probably, like, especially if they watch you, if they're looking at some of the things you've posted or whatever, they may kind of almost feel like they know you a little bit.
I guess.
Or maybe you just fan, and they like, hey, what's up, fan? And I want to come holler at you.
I guess how do I say this? I've gotten too old for this.
Okay, she's like,
it's not that I'm ancient. I mean, I'm 54, but the whole fact is, it's just like, I want somebody to talk to that's real. Don't come at me with some BS that I'm not. And this goes back to exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. I'm not comfortable now being called beautiful. I don't feel that way anymore.
Really?
Yeah. It's not that I'm ugly, but I don't feel, I can look back at myself. And this is something, I had a mother who would sit there and tell me, and I wasn't overweight, but I'm big boned. I am big boned, and I know people are like, oh, that's fat. No, it's big. There are people that are bigger boned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she would tell me, well, you'd be so much prettier if you lost weight. So even when I look back, and then the funny thing is, so I got down, I was after high school, I was down to 135, and I was rocking. I still couldn't wear a size 7. I would never wear a size 7 because I'm tall. So there's no way. I was 5'8". There's no way I'm going to wear a size, and I'm busty. Yeah. So there's no way.
Yeah.
And I come home, and she looks at me and she goes, you're too gaunt. Okay. So there was no winning. So it's like, now when I look back at those pictures and I think, well, I looked really good, I still hear her and I'm like, no, I'm overweight now. And now I have a health condition. So it's like,
So here, now that right there, I would call that a scar.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Because I'm glad that you brought this up, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's one of those things where a lot of times, so many times, pretty much I don't know if I would necessarily say 90% of the time, but probably that or more. Our scars are not really our scars. They really aren't, because they're put upon us so many times by other people and other people's expectations. And it's really not even their expectations. Honestly, it tends to be people tend to project onto other people, the stuff that they want for themselves, but they feel like they can't have. And so when you're projecting and you feel like you're expecting someone to be a certain way and all this kind of stuff, it has nothing to do with the other person. What your mom said to you had nothing to do with you.
No.
It was a reflection of how she felt about herself or what someone else said to her. And it's unfortunate, but then now you're growing up with a complex, like, I'm not beautiful. And if someone says that you are, then you look at them, it goes over your head, or you cringe. And honestly, I had the same situation where it's just like, people would tell me like, oh, you're pretty. And then it will go right over my head. It was just like, you could have just said, oh, you have a blue shirt on. It's the same thing, you know? But, and I would encourage you, if you haven't, or anyone that may have had this experience, I had to tell myself that I'm beautiful. I actually did this. It was a practice that I did. And I started in October of that year. And I remember it was October because I started saying, I am beautiful in the mirror twice a day, in the morning when I brush my teeth and at night when I brush my teeth. And I didn't like, it felt weird at first. This is like, what is this? This is weird. And then I did it until December. I went home. I did it every day until December. I went home to visit some family, and I ran into one of my guy friends, and we're just friends. Like, and he looked at me and he said, somehow you're more beautiful. Had no idea I was saying these affirmations, right? Mm-hmm. And what I learned in that experience is that I was able to receive compliments better. It taught me, it made my subconscious mind okay with feeling good and feeling beautiful. So, you know, if you ever desire to, the fact that he said he had never said that before.
Yeah.
Somehow you're more beautiful. That to me was like confirmation that the work that I was doing was not just inner work. It actually reflected outside of me. So, yeah.
I think, and see, here's the other caveat is the fact that I was in a relationship for 16 years. I had my husband. It was great. My husband was legally blind at a certain point, so it didn't matter how I looked. And I was accepted purely for who I was.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome feeling. However, he's no longer with us. So therefore now it's like, when I look at my thinning hair and I look at that I'm older and I've gained weight, it's like, I don't see that person. So it's kind of coming to a reckoning of things we talked about, of there's certain things in my body I'm not going to be able to change. And, you know, there's the whole avenue of, so when you do date somebody, how is it going to feel to be intimate with them?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I hear you. I'm reading a book and it talks about the power of your subconscious mind. Such a good book. And it's like you hear certain things, like I've heard this kind of stuff before, but I'm like, is it for real? Like how, like, but reading this, and it shares certain stories and examples of other people's experiences. But really, what happens is, like, there's also a water experiment. I can't believe this. I can't remember rather this doctor, but I think he might have been Japanese. I'm not sure, but it was also like really talking to water.
Okay.
And it changes, like on a microscopic level, what the water looks like.
Okay.
So it changed, like, I could totally send you like a video about it, but like a YouTube video or something, but it actually changed what the water molecules and everything look like under the microscope, just based on what you said to it. And I thought that was like, wow, that's powerful. And then reading this book about the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind will actually, the way you program it is the way it starts to show up in your world and in your reality. So I say that all that to say that I truly believe that you have power, and all of us have power to speak to ourselves, to affirm ourselves, and not just as this, oh, this is a woo-woo spiritual thing.
No.
That you know what I'm saying, that's ineffective.
Yeah.
But it actually changes, like if we're made of 75% water or whatnot, it's changing us on a cellular level. And so you have no idea. Your hair might start getting thicker.
Yeah.
Your skin might start glowing more. And I really truly believe just speaking to yourself in those ways can shift everything. So I just feel like it's worth a try. This is work that I'm doing because I think we all deserve, on the deepest levels, to feel good about ourselves as we are, and give ourselves permission to feel good, especially if we have had trauma that has been kind of, against that. So, yeah.
And I'm not going to disagree with any of that, because I've had a person on here that I know who lives in Australia who actually sees energy. And then I had a neuroscientist talk about how we are all connected. So yes, I do metaphysical work. So I do believe it. I would not disagree with you. I believe it wholeheartedly that yes, our thoughts can definitely make things happen for us. And subconsciously, it's hard to get out of that mire of negativity when you've been through it and you've had trauma.
Yes.
But before I let you go, I want to talk about your podcast a little.
Yes.
Tell my listeners about your show and what exactly do you do? Is it a solo podcast? Do you have guests come on? What do you do?
So my podcast is called I've Got Scars, Baby. And, based on my story, like that's the reason for it, based on the story that I just, kind of explained to everyone. But I wanted, because that kind of pivotal moment for me was everybody has scars, some on the outside, some on the inside. That was so pivotal for me. And that actually helped me with my breakthrough. That I said, you know what? What if there was a podcast for other people to share their scars moment, their experience with trauma, and then share how they moved through this trauma and got on the other side of it and became empowered. So that's really kind of the focus of the show. So I speak with guests. I've had guests on the show. One guy, he's a Paralympic athlete, like a champion. He went to the Olympics, the Paralympics, but he has something called CMT, where it's a neuropathy. So he cannot feel his legs all the way down to his feet. And I said, well, how are you walking? He said, I have no idea, but he's a champion swimmer. And his story is amazing. I had someone on the show who had 3 kidney transplants. So I had a person on the show who had 2 lung transplants, but I've also had people on the show who've experienced, physical sexual trauma, pregnant at 13 years old and out on their own, having to raise a child and, to raise themselves essentially. So I've had all these different people. I also had, so she's an influencer, Tabitha Brown, and she's everywhere, vegan influencer. And she talked about her journey of being not known at all to now I'm on Ellen and all these, just amazing experience. And so yeah, and really it's just because of the story. When people share their story, I believe people can relate to it. Like you and I had this conversation and I relate to you. And I'm sharing my story. Yeah. And it's beautiful when I think people can connect and relate to one another on the trauma. And if you can relate to one another on the trauma, you can relate to someone on the triumph as well, on the empowered side of that person. You're like, oh, it's possible. So yeah, that's my podcast and that's why I do it. And so, yeah.
So is there anything that we did not discuss that you'd like to add?
You know what? I feel like we talked about it all. Okay. I just, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This is amazing. And I don't take anything for granted that you saw my story and you felt that I was worth bringing on this show.
Yeah.
And I really hope that people listening understand that just because you're in a space right now doesn't mean you'll always be there.
Exactly.
And that's the beautiful part. Like, even if your circumstances don't change so much, like my scars are still here. But the thing that had to change was me and my perception and my consciousness. And sometimes you have situations, maybe something that happened to you when you were 6 years old, and you can't change what happened to you when you were 6 years old, but you can change your consciousness at whatever age you are right now so that you can have what you want, because you deserve to have what you want. So that's really all I want to share. I'm so grateful. I do want to say that I do have a book in case you want to kind of go a little bit deep in my story. I have what I call a self-help memoir. It's sharing my story, the depths of it, because it's more than just the physical scars, but how the physical scars related to other areas of my life, as in career and relationships as well. But it has questions at the end of every chapter for you to ask yourself, to examine your own story. But it's called I've Got Scars, Baby. It's on Amazon. You can go to audrabryant.com as well. But yeah, that's where I am.
The only thing I do want to add one thing is you were talking about the 6-year-old that may have experienced trauma. The fact of the matter is, when we are that young, even in our teenage years, if something happens to us, our mind protects us. It will reframe the situation where we don't look at it fully. We sit there, we mask it, and we dress it up in a bow that makes it palatable.
Yes.
It's absolutely not until we are older that we can sit there and actually unpack the truth of the story.
Yes, I'm so glad that you shared that, because that's very, very true. Like, you don't know why you feel the way you feel, how you got to feel the way you feel, why you see the world the way you see the world, until you start to look back and say, oh, these things happened. Now, what I will say is that looking at where you are currently, and then looking at, just imagine what you really would like to have, right? Even if you just said, oh, that would be nice. Instead of, whether it's a big old house or a big old whatever, if you look at that and say, I would like to have this, and then look at yourself now and say, well, what is stopping me from necessarily having this, right? Then that's probably going to point you back to some other stuff that went on, certain blocks that were instilled in you when you were younger. So that can really help you to determine what you really want.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I thank you, Audra, for coming on. And it's been a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So Audra was very open about how this all occurred for her and about the journey that she went on that actually transformed her life. Her book, I've Got Scars, Baby, How to Embrace Your Scars, Empower Your Purpose. That if you're looking to try to heal yourself, and as she said, scars don't necessarily have to be physical. There are a lot of mental and emotional scars that we all have. And if somebody says, oh, I don't have any, well, I'm going to say bullshit. I've kept it PC the whole time, but, because we all have gone through some kind of trauma. I don't care how perfect you think somebody's life is. There's always a bit of trauma. There's always a bit of hurt and a bit of pain and a bit of sadness and loss, as well as joy, happiness, and all that other good stuff. But you have to actually confront that shadow side of yourself and take care of it and heal it. It's important. And, her podcast, I've Got Scars, Baby, I think, just like this show, she's putting it out there for people to learn something and see that they're not alone, to learn that there's another person on a journey. So I think those things are very important. And I'm glad I got to know her for a little bit. I'm glad we had that conversation because, maybe as much as I talk about labels, maybe it's time I'm a little bit nicer to my own self. And anybody listening, if you're struggling with, maybe not always being happy with the way you look or with the way you sound or however you feel, maybe it's time to look at yourself and go, you know what? It's me. I'm okay. I am not the norm. I am not going to fit into the cookie cutter. And, that's my big push is about labels. And sometimes we just have to take a step back and look at our own self and go, okay, time for a change. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you want to leave me a message or you want to be a guest on the show, please reach out to Donna, Dauna, at better2podcast.com. That's Donna at better2podcast.com. All our social media links, as well as every episode from the beginning, is at www.better2podcast.com. If you want to leave a review, you can do so on Apple or on podchaser.com. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, whenever you choose to listen to this. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.